Good evening. 1 year ago, Sir Keir Starmer swept into Downing Street in the UK on a wave of optimism. Today, his approval ratings are in freefall, with even loyal Labour voters questioning his leadership. Meanwhile, across Europe, the EU faces a new warning. Its long-standing model of diplomacy and consensus may no longer be enough to confront a world increasingly shaped by confrontation and conflict. Tonight, we explore two parallel crises: a Labour Party struggling to hold its base, and a European Union grappling with the limits of peacetime governance in a war-driven era. I'm Mark Summers, and welcome to In Focus. Welcome to the programme. Now, according to the Times of London, Keir Starmer's approval has plummeted from plus 10% to minus 39% in just 1 year. Many of his 2024 voters are now defecting, with cost of living pressures, immigration concerns and failed welfare reforms cited as top reasons. Even Reform UK, once on the political fringe, is now polling ahead of Labour. The public backlash isn't limited to one issue. Polls show disillusionment cutting across age groups and party lines, with older voters overwhelmingly critical of Starmer's leadership. The Labour leader's cautious style, once seen as refreshing contrast to bombast, now appears out of step with an electorate demanding clarity, speed and conviction. The honeymoon period is clearly over, and the reckoning has begun. Now, to unpack these trends for us, we are joined by Babak Imamian, who is a respected political and economic analyst. Welcome to the programme. Thanks for being here with us on Q News. So let's begin with those numbers. A year after taking office, Keir Starmer's approval has essentially collapsed. What do you think explains such a sharp decline?
Well, Mark, as you said, they are talking about confrontation. Now, confrontation only happens if you have no plan. And the problem with the British Labour Party and the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer is because he has no plan. He has no plan for economy. He has no plan for the reindustrialization of the British industries. He has no plan on foreign policy. And most important thing, when you become a leader of a country, managing the country is not your priority, because there is a very competent civil service there to do that. So your job as a leader of a country is to bring in money into the country, direct foreign investment. That's what President Trump is doing. And none of the European leaders, including the British Prime Minister, has committed to that task. That's why the economy is not doing well, and that's why the country has no direction right now.
Now, one striking figure is that only 49% of Labour voters, that's his own backing, the people that voted for him last time and would normally support his party, the Labour Party, only 49% of Labour voters from last year say that he's doing well. Is this going to be very damaging, this internal erosion of support by his own voters?
Well, right now, the economic growth, the UK economic growth is about 1% per annum. And that has been the average for the last 17 years. So, and just look at the inflation figure today at 3.5%. So if you look at it, the economy is growing at 1%. And the inflation is at 3.5%. So people are becoming poorer all the time. Now, the question is, his supporters went to him because they thought he would improve the economy. But obviously, he cannot improve the economy because he has no plan for it. But then what is the alternative for them? Unless they go to extreme left or in some cases to extreme right. But do the extreme left have any better policies? No, they don't. Would the extreme right have any better policies? No. The question is, there is no national debate about how to improve the economy. And the best way to improve the economy right now at no cost is deregulation. And nobody is talking about massive deregulation because deregulation means tax cut at no effect to anybody. Regulations are taxes. Deregulation means tax cuts. But there is no debate about that at all.
But wouldn't that mean if you start slashing taxes in order to try and bring investment into the country, one of the immediate problems with that is a black hole in your finances. Of course, there's a lot of expenditure in the UK, whether it be for the health service or for education and other parts of the economy. If you turn the United Kingdom into some kind of tax haven, wouldn't that be damaging overall for the country?
Well, the economy, if you look at it, we've had these debates for over 200 years. We had Adam Smith, who said a country is defined by its wealth makers. So a country without its wealth makers is nothing, is not a country. And then 100 years later, when Karl Marx said a country is its masses, so it belongs to masses. But now we understand, after actually experimenting both sides, the Adam Smith and Karl Marx, that actually a country is nothing without its wealth makers. And for the wealth makers to prosper, so the whole economy would prosper, we need low taxes. Low taxes attracts wealth makers. And wealth makers are a few. They are not produced all the time. They are wealth makers are people with talents. But the left of politics portray the people who are wealth makers as selfish people, greedy people, people who are bad for the society. They have low morals. We have to get over that class war, and we have to appreciate our wealth makers. And we need a low tax economy so more people become wealth makers.
And of course, they have had a problem, the Labour government have had a problem with billionaires and millionaires leaving the United Kingdom. Is this a worry for Labour if they can't attract business when one of their key their key objectives is for growth?
To answer your question, is two ways. One is the Labour members of parliament. No, it's not a worry to them because they don't understand economy. They have no appreciation that we need wealth makers. Ideologically, they're not there. They don't believe in wealth makers. And they think there is that abundance of wealth there. They can tax everything and there is unlimited resources. So just tax everything and redistribute wealth. So when it comes to actually the members of the parliament of Labour Party, no, intellectually they're not there. But the country will suffer. And a lot of people would understand because the economy is in decline right now.
That may be, and that of course the figures bear you out to what you're saying. But if there was to be a great tax burden reduction, and it takes some time for the wealth makers to come back into the country and to start businesses, in the meantime, there's going to have to be big cuts. What would you cut?
Well, the first thing I would cut is there is this institution in United Kingdom called FCA, Financial Conduct Authority, which has done nothing since 2008, but make house purchases more difficult than before, and also any transaction make it before. If we abolish Financial Conduct Authority, it would just improve the whole economy. The GDP would improve by 8%. There is this body of regulators, this body of people who are just, all they do is just regulate constantly on every transaction, do nothing but slow the economy. They slow the transaction between money. They slow the investment into United Kingdom. So the more we get rid of these these institutions who were just set up just to regulate for no purposes, just to give comfort that there is some sort of regulations, we could get rid of all of them and the economy would improve. I can assure you, previous to FCA, we had no problem before. Now suddenly there is that issue. If there is no FCA, Financial Conduct Authority, suddenly the whole country would collapse.
Well, well, of course, let's go back to 2008. We had a lot of deregulation under New Labour in the United Kingdom in the 2000s. And then, of course, we had the 2008 crash and banks like the Royal Bank of Scotland being bailed out for billions and billions by the taxpayer. Is that the kind of deregulation that you'd like to see?
Okay, Mark, thank you for bringing that up. First of all, the whole idea that 2008 crash happened, it was because of the rating agency, United States, that they were awarding AAA to the bonds which were like triple C or triple D or junk bonds. So there was this injection of these toxic bonds into the financial system, which caused the collapse more than anything with the rating agencies. There was that issue. But even if you look at it, the whole cost of the financial collapse in 2008 was 147 billion. We've paid more towards the Ukraine war in 2022. We paid almost as much, a lot more in COVID. So the whole issue of even if there is a massive failure, economic failure, due to deregulation, it would be in a small amount of money and recoverable. So this idea of, wow, these 2008 was a massive, no, actually, when you look at it, it was only 147 billion, much less than the Ukraine war, which is costing us, and much less than the COVID, and also, in that case, Brexit also.
So bailing out a few bankers isn't too much to pay. It's only a few hundred billion here and there, I guess. Let's just come to, you mentioned...
Mark, you have to give me here. That's an extreme case, by the way. That was an extreme case, and we haven't had that. The banks are self-regulators. They do extremely a good job.
Now, let's come to, you mentioned the far-right party, the Reform Party, led by Nigel Farage, who some viewers may know. He's a good friend of Donald Trump. They're ahead in the national polls. Due to the parliamentary system in the UK, it's unlikely, or it could happen, but it would be a massive ask for them to become the next government. But they haven't got a surge in popularity, and immigration is a huge issue in the UK, as it is in many parts of Europe. What would you say about the growing love for Nigel Farage and the Reform Party?
Well, the only reason Nigel Farage is growing popularity is because neither the Conservative Party or Labour Party are offering any solutions to our problems. They have no new ideas, nothing. You hardly hear anything from either of them. Actually, President Trump has reshaped the geopolitics by totally concentrating on trade and prosperity. He's been doing that. And while the European leaders have been extremely busy on confrontation with Russia, they have this preoccupation with Russia. They just like constant hostility toward Russia, where Russia should be part of the Europe friends. Russia is Europe. And Russia is a big market for Europeans. And we want Russia to grow and become a big market for the Europe. But no, the European leaders love the hostility towards Russia because they still live with that Cold War mentality that Russia today is still the Soviet Union of 1980s and 70s, which is not true. Russia is more capitalist now, more than most of the countries. There is less regulation in Russia than it is in Europe.
Well, stay with us. We're going to come on to Europe properly in just a moment. Babak Emamian is with us. Just stay with us if you can, because as Starmer's political honeymoon ends, the Labour Party now faces a deeper challenge: how to lead a restless public in turbulent times. But as Starmer's leadership stumbles in the UK, Europe is facing its own reckoning. With rising threats and waning US support, calls are growing for the EU to abandon diplomacy and prepare for confrontation. Can a union built on peace adapt to a world shaped by conflict? Let's turn to Brussels. In Politico, Gary Kasparov and Gabrielis Landsbergis argue that Europe must abandon its culture of consensus and embrace confrontation. Faced with threats from Russia, China, and the global authoritarian network, the EU's current model is fundamentally unsuited, they say, to defend its values. They propose bold reforms, ending unanimity in decision-making, completing the enlargement of the EU eastward, and building an autonomous European defence system. This is not merely a theoretical shift, it's a call to action, with American protection retreating under Trump and Ukraine still under siege. The EU must decide whether to evolve or remain trapped in its founding ideals. The piece, or the written piece we're talking about here in Politico, warns that without decisive leadership, Europe could lose both its geopolitical relevance and internal cohesion. The question is no longer whether Europe needs to change, but whether it's still capable of doing so, they argue. And Babak Mamian is still here with us as we talk about Europe. Gary Kasparov, obviously no fan of Russia, saying that Europe has misjudged Russia. But Kasparov and Landbergis in their article saying that the EU was designed for peace times, but now much of the world is at war. Do you think Europe is structurally unprepared for the threats of today's world?
Well, I read the article. I couldn't work out what he meant. Does he mean we have to be at constant war with everyone? Or does he mean that we have to have a strong military in Europe in order to resolve conflicts? Because as President Trump says, peace through strength, which means resolving conflicts, not actually confrontation. That's the whole idea. But if you look at Europe, they have no plan for peace or no plan for war. And that's why they keep coming up with these naive ideas, confrontation. What does that mean? Are we also going to go at war with each other within Europe? I mean, France and Germany, or France and United Kingdom, or so. What does this confrontation? Is the way forward for the entire Europe, for its prosperity, constant confrontation? No, that's not the case. The case is you would have a strong military strength in order to resolve conflicts. And because the Europeans are not prepared to pay the cost for resolving conflicts, which you need financially to be committed, emotionally to be committed, military to be committed, they haven't been there, whether it's in Pakistan and India, Thailand and Cambodia, whether Rwanda and Congo, in Gaza and other places. So that's the weakness of Europe. They have no plan what they want to be.
And of course, NATO remains EU's defence backbone. There are some countries that pay, I think, just about the amount that they're supposed to pay at the moment. Most countries in NATO now saying that they will move up to 5%. It seems unrealistic that they're ever going to get there, to be honest. I don't know your view on that. But do you think that it's time that the EU countries started to take defense spending more seriously?
Well, as far as NATO is concerned, because Europe is not united, so now NATO is Europe's foreign policy. NATO is Europe's defense policy, because Europeans are not united. And the reason why they're not united, because there's a lack of leadership. There are a lot of young, inexperienced leaders in European countries, and most of them are in those positions of influence and power because of diversity rather than meritocracy. So issue we have right now. And the reason because most of European leaders are from left of politics, and people from left of politics are more concerned about fringe policies than peace and prosperity and economic policies. As I mentioned, even with the Labour Party in Britain, there is hardly any intellectualism when it comes to global trade and international trade. You hardly see them talk about how to bring in foreign investment in the United Kingdom, how to copy President Trump. There's hardly that aspect. Actually, they go against him and they say, no, that's the wrong policy. We have to go opposite to what President Trump is doing.
There's been a lot of disquiet in the EU about Ursula von der Leyen's visit to Scotland to see Donald Trump and what she got out of that, a worse deal than Keir Starmer managed to get for the UK. Some embarrassment in some of the member states of the EU. What is your view on how they handled the negotiation with President Trump on tariffs?
Well, I think first of all, it took a hostile position towards President Trump. And if you remember, even the foreign secretary for EU at the beginning of President Trump presidency, second-term presidency, she said we need a new leader for the free world. That's the amount of hostility the beginning of second term of President Trump from the EU politicians. So you may say, okay, these are politicians. They should get over this. No, they have its impact on people. And the other thing is over-regulation and other issues which the EU has not sorted out yet. They're highly regulated. Now, they needed to do this. And more importantly, they needed to do for themselves to deregulate. So President Trump was an excuse for the EU to deregulate itself rather than doing it because they were giving in to President Trump.
And of course, that brings us to unanimity or the calls for the EU to stop making decisions as one bloc. But if that happened, wouldn't that be the end of the EU? But of course, there are internal divisions as well, especially when you have actors like Viktor Orban in Hungary.
Well, Europe is different from the United States. The United States is a very young, 250 years old as a country, and they're a country of immigrants. So people in United States, they don't carry any baggages. If you look at Europe, it's over 2,000 years. Countries have developed, and there's lots of local grudges and a lot of local cultures, local traditions, history, lots of history. So this idea of, oh, you could forget about the history of these small countries or larger countries or the bad local grudges. No, it doesn't work like that. You actually have to accept there is that reality on the ground and address it. It's not going to be a problem as long as you appreciate the reality on the ground and address those issues.
So when it comes to your view and being pro-deregulation, you must have been profoundly upset at the United Kingdom leaving the European Union, which would that force more regulation or enable the UK to deregulate more?
You're right. I was very upset because I could see we need lots of skilled labor coming into Britain. We need them. And by restriction, that means we were replacing the skilled labor from Europe, from outside Europe, going to subcontinent of India or Asia or Africa, which are fine. But having European migrant labor is more beneficial because they are more closer culturally, and also they are more local. So there would be lots of travel between the countries, between here and go. They would not stay here for long. But if you are traveling as far away from Asia or Africa, once you are here, you stay for much longer. So there is that issue that nobody thought it through properly, that this is what is going through. And that's what happens when a policy is not thought through properly. That's what it fails. There was no definition, exact definition to Brexit. That's why it has failed.
And when it comes to the population of the United Kingdom, going back to the UK, there is a very strong racist element which says we don't want foreigners here. When is a leader in the United Kingdom going to turn around to the population of the UK and say, actually, we need immigration. Our country needs it for any growth and any economic success?
Right now, I cannot see it because most of them are weak leaders. They're not strong leaders, and they don't want to act to people. They just want to get their votes, and they will say anything just to win their votes and to have to win a position in politics. They don't seriously are concerned about the future of the country. They're more concerned about their own future than the country.
And going back to the EU then, of course, will they ever change? Will there be any change? I mean, trying to get 27 member states to agree on anything is trying to get a super tanker to turn, I guess. What do you foresee for the future of the EU in the coming few years?
I think EU should shift from left of politics more to the right of politics, that like what is happening in Italy, and other countries should follow. And the more EU moves to the right of politics, the more chance it has to survive in the longer term. But if it stays on the left of politics, it would collapse under sheer force of too much politics. There is too much politics. Everything is political right now in EU. So you have to get rid of politics. Decisions have to be made instantly, not through political committees all the time.
And if you look at a country like Poland, of course, you have the centrist leader of the Prime Minister in Donald Tusk. And then we've just had the right-wing president elected. What does that say about a country like Poland, which is always quite a good country to look at if you're looking at a European country, to show you how other countries might be?
Well, right-of politics is about low taxes and is about economic growth. Left-of politics is about high taxes and low economic growth. So you could understand why people vote for the right-of politics. But sometimes left-of politics promises too much, and people fall for it. Because there is that portion of any society that they have no ambition, and all they look forward is how much benefit they can get from a government. There is that portion. In United Kingdom, it's as much as almost 50%. In United States, it's about 20%. So it changes. That portion of society, that's a reality of life, by the way. That portion of society that has no ambition anymore, has given up, and all it looks forward is to states providing benefits. But that portion has also a right to vote. And they, first of all, that portion hardly pays any taxes. So they have no problem with taxing people who earn more in order for them to have more benefits. That problem with Western liberal democracy right now.
But you wouldn't take away their vote, though, would you? We're not going there. We're not going that far.
I don't know. I mean, that could be a debate. I mean, we could have a debate on that. I mean, how could you have representation
the more tax you pay, the more votes you get, that kind of thing. Unfortunately, we're just out of time.
And the other way around. Why should you have representation if you're not contributing nothing?
Okay, well, unfortunately, we have to leave it there, but let's pick that up next time. It's been a wonderful discussion. Babak Amamian, thank you very much for joining us here on Q News. Now, as war reshapes the global order, Europe faces a hard truth. If it cannot defend itself, it may not survive in its current form. From Starmer's struggles in London to the European Union's existential debate in Brussels, leadership is being redefined not by vision, but by urgency. The West's political projects are no longer just about progress, they're about endurance, it seems. Join us next time on In Focus. Good night.